will life be like in the new normal? I've heard lots of people say that our experience of COVID-19 and the coronavirus lockdown will make us better people, or our society will be a better place for our experience of the last 12 weeks. What does that better life look like? I'm going to give this little series of 8 videos where we're going to look at what Jesus' answer to that question might be, what a better life looks like, based on the set of sayings called the Beatitudes. We're all in this together. That has been the motto of these last 12 weeks, and we've learned very quickly in our experience of coronavirus and lockdown that we were dependent on other people, that we couldn't do this all by ourselves, that we were depending on others. And we've learned to be dependent on the NHS. We've learned to depend on people who've delivered our shopping to us. We've learned to depend on delivery drivers or the person who's picked up the telephone to us to speak to us when perhaps we've had nobody to speak to all week and kept us maybe a little bit sane. So we've learned to depend on other people, and I suppose the question then is whether we take that sense of dependence into the new normal that comes along afterwards, or whether we go back to the old ways. Because the old ways are very different. The old ways are much more centred on me, on myself. I'm the master of my own universe. I can look after myself. My ego is king. I don't need anybody else. I don't need anyone to help me or to do anything for me. Thank you very much. I can do it for myself. I can manage my own life. And so we end up with a way of living that's very much self-centred and self-dependent. And the only drawback with that is that when my ego is king, I have a certain way of doing something, and when your ego is king, you have a different way. And when these egos come into contact and come into conflict, then we end up with a society that's very different. And we end up all being little islands in a sea of conflict. And that's not a very good recipe for life. So a sense of dependence is a value that Jesus teaches. He calls us those who are poor in spirit. And that doesn't paint a picture that's particularly popular. And it begins with these 2 words. The 2 words are, I can't. And again, we don't like using these words because we like to think we can. We can look after ourselves. But, you know, we say, I can't do this. I can't help myself. I can't find grace and hope for myself. I can't save myself. And so we look for someone who can, and we look to depend on someone who is able to help us. And for Jesus, of course, that sense of dependence is ultimately a sense of dependence on God, that God is the source of grace, that God is the one who is able to help us, that God is the one who saves us. And when we say, I can't, God promises that he will. And that sense of dependence becomes the first stage on a journey for us to understand the way in which God is able to help us, and that we depend on him for our sense of well-being and for this sense of a better life. That's where this begins for Jesus, in a sense of dependence on God and on other people along with that. So what will a better life look like? Well, here's the first answer to that question. And the first answer to that question is a sense of dependence, of depending on God, depending on other people, and looking to them for help, looking to God for grace, looking to others for support and for help, understanding that we're not able to do it all by ourselves.